may find out tonight.
This my one? Because y'all use the circle. Like being outside on this wall.
You feel the air coming from back here?
That's the way it's done. You know how they roll. Today, anytime, John.
Right. Oh. Yeah.
So, okay, we'll call to order the regular meeting of the Eastpointe Community Schools Board of Education, February 27th, 2023, at 6:32. Please call the roll.
Okay. Mr. Roscoe,
Present.
Dr. Early,
Here.
Mr. Williams here, Mr. Grunberg,
Here.
Ms. Rayford,
Here.
Ms. Richardson,
Present.
Mrs. Grunberg.
Here.
Okay, if we could all please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next we need a motion for approval of the agenda.
Place forth a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Support.
Please call the vote.
Okay. Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Dr. Early?
Yes.
Mr. Williams, yes. Mr. Grunberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rayford?
No.
Ms. Richardson?
Approve and support.
Ms. Grunberg?
Yes.
Next we need a motion for consent agenda.
Place forth a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Support.
Please call the vote.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Williams, yes. Dr. Early?
Yes.
Mr. Grunberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rayford?
No.
Ms. Richardson?
Approve and support.
Ms. Grunberg?
Yes.
Motion carries. Superintendent's report. Superintendent Gibson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Board of Education, and for those of you watching our board meeting online. After having a few snow days, we are back in action here in Eastpointe Community Schools. I want to let the board know that just prior to coming to the board meeting this evening, I was on a Zoom conference call with the MDE, the Office of Partnership Districts, and Dr. Sue Carnell, who is the number 2 of the Michigan Department of Education. The MDE has listened to the concerns of partnership districts that were shared. And the following actions have happened. The MyKIP deadline, which was expected by April 17th, has now been extended to June 30th. The Data Hub has moved to being recommended but not required, and the EPIC survey has been moved to recommended but not required. And it was a very positive phone call today with the MDE in which they listened to the concerns of local school districts navigating this 4th round of identification. So I appreciate the support from the MDE as well as from the Macomb Intermediate School District in helping to lift the voices of local districts to guide the work of the partnership schools. Construction updates. Here you see the new marquee has been installed at Pleasant View. It is not electrified yet, but I also was able to stop in and see some of the Bellevue Elementary School has the last bathrooms being updated. And the crew at Bellevue that's been doing the tile work has been embraced by the building. Teachers regularly stop by to say good morning as the tiles are being installed. So we thank this gentleman, whose name I did not get, but is quite a character. We thank all of the workers doing the work on our schools. I think the Bellevue bathrooms are going to end up looking the best out of all of the 5 that we have done, just because the Bellevue staff spends so much time thanking all of the contractors. So thank you, and we're so excited to see the new restrooms, and the children love them. Once they get over how excited they are, now we have to get them out of the bathrooms and back into the classrooms. Strategic plan update. We are launching forward with the 5 goals identified with the Board of Education in our strategic plan. We have continued a partnership with Perry Soldweedle, who helped guide the strategic planning committee through the process. Perry is helping our teams move to action. The district has formed 5 action teams for the 5 goal areas. And this week, on Wednesday, March 1st, thanks to Caitlin Keenitz and Wendy Coleman, the district will be beginning to launch our communication of our strategic plan. And Caitlin has planned for us a 3-week communication blitz that will include a community, family, as well as internal communications. And I thank her very much for all of her hard work and great ideas in helping us. And I'm excited to watch our Facebook page and our website begin to explode with the sharing more of our strategic plan. Crescentwood Family Valentine's Activity. This year, a huge focus for us as a district has been involving and lifting the voices of our families. And our families are showing up in huge ways all across the district. Crescentwood had a Valentine's activity, and I want to be clear, this was not an activity planned by teachers. It's actually the secretary, Miss Jacqueline at Crescentwood, who planned an activity that involved over 60 Crescentwood families coming together for an afternoon of making crafts and cookies. And while this is not an academically focused event that we hosted at our schools, it signifies to me a return of families and community building to our schools, and it is wonderful to see. And we have unconventional people stepping up in leadership roles to bring families back to our schools. Congratulations to Scholarship Award recipient Akila Martin. She got a $1,000 college scholarship from McDonald's as part of their Black History Month program. She received her scholarship in the courtyard or a cobblestone area of the high school, and we are so proud. She was also interviewed on Channel 4's Live in the D. Akila is planning to attend Oakland University to study marketing. Next, we have a parent event at our preschool, and the smiles of those proud parents says it all. Enjoying being in our classrooms, meeting and connecting and growing in community. We thank our ELC and all of our staff for putting together an opportunity for parents to come and be part of our community of learners. And finally, I'd like to celebrate another community and parent involvement event, Black History Month Wax Museum at Pleasant View. Students dressed up as their favorite Black characters throughout history, historians, athletes, activists, and they posed. They were in costume. They had talking points and boards. We had 25 students participate, but more families than 25 come. So families came to the school, even who didn't have children participating in the Wax Museum, to support the school. So a huge thank you to Pleasant View for celebrating Black History Month and for making another event for our families to connect to our schools. Hands-on learning in Mrs. James' classroom at Forest Park. This was a great opportunity. Stopped into Mrs. James' classroom, which is a kindergarten classroom, and she gave the children all boxes of candy hearts, and children were sorting, graphing, and organizing, and amazingly still had candy to sort and to organize. Mrs. Hess's classroom of preschoolers at the ELC did a similar experiment where children got to watch what happened to candy hearts in water, vinegar, and lime soda and make hypotheses. What was amazing to me is Mrs. James stopped me when I was in her classroom and she said, "I've never done this activity before with kindergartners. I always do it with older children." And so Mrs. James was like amazed, proud, and very impressed with the graphing and the hard work of our students in her classroom. Thank you, Mrs. James, for setting high expectations for our students. Upcoming events. It is March's Reading Month. That does kick off this Wednesday, March 1st. Many of our board, we do have senators, city council members. There was talk of a governor visit possibly as well. We will see how all of this unfolds in March. If you are interested in connecting with Eastpointe Community Schools and being a reader, please reach out to the Office of the Superintendent. We would love to connect you with a school looking for adult role models to share a love of reading with all of our children. March 2nd is a Gleaners food distribution at Eastpointe Middle School. Menu looks great. March 2nd is also the State of the City, where I invite members of the public to come and participate. I will be a featured speaker at the State of the City, as well as the mayor and Judge Galen. March 23rd will be Crescentwood's Literacy Night at 4 p.m. March 28th, Forest Park's Literacy Night, and the end of the third quarter is March 31st. Thank you so much, and that concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have first hearing of the public. Does anyone wish to be heard? Anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, that opens and closes at 6:43. And then we have discussion action, business operation, bond planning update. Who's taking that?
So I'd like to introduce, I'd like to introduce Jeff Atkins and Darren McKenna, as well as Robert Carlesso to take over the presentation. But I also like to just point out to the Board of Education and the community that this is goal 5 of our strategic plan. And I told Mr. Carlesso that he gets bonus points for already having work moving in goal number 5. So, Mr. Carlesso, I turn it over to you.
So a few weeks ago, we had kind of our initial kickoff of our bond plan. And this evening, we're going to have an update from Barton Mallow, Jeff Atkins, and from Darren McKenna, who's the partners in architecture. We'll be available to answer any questions that you may have. Want to take it away?
Thank you very much. Where should we start? Good evening, and thank you for letting us present to you. We were back here, I think in October was the last time we presented with just some initial concepts of what this could be for, that camera doesn't work, so we actually have to get it aside. Yeah, I guess they want to be on screen. Thank you. All right, so we're all good now? All right, so I'll start over. So, good evening. We were back here in October, kind of talking about what we could do for bond planning. I feel like I'm at the Oscars or something here. My speech, unfortunately, would probably be too long for the Oscars. So my name is Jeff Atkins. I've actually worked with Eastpointe Schools back in 2009 when the bond program went along there. I worked with Mr. Grunberg way back then, so we did a lot of good stuff with that bond program. So when the opportunity came back up again to continue working with this, I know you've got a sinking fund ongoing. I was pretty excited about the opportunity to help plan what could be your next bond program. Also with us is Darren McKenna. I don't know if you want to give quick introductions. I'm guessing the board knows you, but.
They do. Yeah, Jeff and I have worked together, I think, probably 12 years now, off and on, in various capacities. But yeah, he's going to be a great steward for the district, and I'm just here to help support him. This is mostly his presentation. But if you have any questions for me, certainly let me know.
Thank you. If you want to go 2 slides ahead. And one more. So what we wanted to cover today, I'll probably focus mostly on the time frame of what the planning would look like to go for a bond program. I'll also talk about the financial information of what the district can bond for, what their capacity is. Darren and I will kind of tag team what potentially the scope of work can be. I'd like to turn that always over to the architects to let them tell you what the dreams are, what the improvements could be for the district. And then I'll plan to kind of wrap up with what the next steps are in the whole process to keep us on track for that bond program, and then open up for some questions and discussions. But what I want to emphasize is that today's not the end point. Today's just a step in the process. If we continue along this path, I'll probably be back here in front of the board 3 or 4 more times before we would recommend calling for election. So we'll have plenty of time to have some interaction. We didn't want to do a whole data dump today with a bunch of information, but we wanted to bring you up to speed with what we've done over the last month and a half as we start to plan for a bond program. So next slide, please. So just a little bit of a history recap for what maybe you already know, but maybe some of the people in the audience don't know. So as I mentioned, back in 2009 was the last bond program that the district had. It was for a little over $23 million. Since then, the district has had a sinking fund program, which generates about $1.5 million per year, which is great. I'm sure very appreciative of the community for supporting that. But unfortunately, a sinking fund doesn't allow the district to do enough. $1.5 million seems like a lot of money, but in a district the size of Eastpointe, that's not enough to do any kind of improvements. It's really just enough money to kind of take care of the necessities, taking care of stuff like your restroom improvements, your front entrances. It goes well, but it would take a long time to generate the type of investments that you'd want to over the duration. But there's been a lot of great things that have been done with those front entrances, the restrooms. And right now in the process, I know there's some design work and some bids being planned for some major mechanical improvements. I think that'll be very, very noticeable for both the teachers in the classrooms and the students in those classrooms once those mechanical improvements happen. But what we also did is we started to think long-term. What does a master plan look like for the district? So phase one, we're calling it, is that sinking fund and those ESSER funds. Those ESSER funds were something that helped the district do a lot of technology improvements in the district. But really what we want to start focusing on is what we're calling phase two. And phase two is focusing on the early learners, your 4 elementary schools and your early learning center. Those buildings are very solid. You got very solid programs in there. And we just think there's a lot of opportunity to really improve what's being done at those buildings. And then what we're calling phase three is just taking a little bit longer lens look at the district, at the secondary buildings. We still want to address some of the needs at those secondary buildings, but we feel it takes a little more time to look at what those buildings want to be. Those are a lot more community driven. There's a lot more investigation that needs to be done. We don't want to shortchange that process, but we definitely want to put that on our radar to think of what could those secondary buildings become in the district. Next slide. So right now, typically when we work with school districts, and I think I shared this slide last time, is we tell districts, if you're going to look to go for a bond program, you want to plan out about 12 months for that planning process and that campaign to happen. You got a great jump start on it when you initially did the facility assessment with Partners in Architecture. That gave you a great jump on that. As we talked about this in October, you're already ahead of the schedule, so we didn't need to really jump into anything. But we said after the first of the year, you really want to start re-engaging in that if you wanted to look at an election sometime in 2023. So right now we've looked at an August election. The city's running an election at that time, so you can partner with them. It saves the school district the cost of running that election. So it's your earliest opportunity to bring something to the voters. The other thing we like about August election is it does allow work to happen in 2024. If you push the election off to November or May of 24, it just makes one more year before the work happens in place. So we wanted to start targeting that earliest opportunity, knowing we can always back and scale back from that if we, somewhere along the line, we decided we want to scale back. But right now, we're targeting that August election date. So I know you can't read this on the screen, but really what I want to do is just emphasize that we've created a very, very detailed schedule of how to get to that. Basically, it's a week-by-week task that we need to, the bond planning team needs to come up with in order to meet those timelines. There's a schedule we work with every school district on. There's very regimented requirements that the Department of Treasury puts on us to bring a bond proposal forward to the community. So we've had to back up from that and build a schedule around the Department of Treasury requirements. And this schedule gets us, as I mentioned, there's several meetings we'll have in front of the board to review different steps along the way. On April 10th at your board meeting, we'll be asking you to do a final review of that bond application and to sign it, to send it off to Treasury to do a formal review. They'll provide a review back to us in May, so then at your May election or May board meeting, you can call for election. So that's the timeline that we're working with. Those are the milestones that we're working with right now. So a little bit of financial information, I want to kind of sprinkle that in just to kind of give you some guidelines and really some very positive, encouraging information is what we found out from PFM, your financial advisor. So first of all, I just kind of want to show where Eastpointe benchmarks. I've got you, you're the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7th bar over there. So the blue bars is what you have in bond debt, and the yellow bar is what you have in sinking funds. And that orange line is really where the midpoint is, or the average is in Macomb County. So you can see that Eastpointe is slightly below the average for Macomb County. Got a couple districts that are way towards the top of that, but most districts are right in line, but the majority of what they have is bond capacity or bonding debt, where Eastpointe is really almost 50-50 between the sinking fund and the bond. But I just want to let you know where you are, so if as you bring this to the community and they say, why are you asking for money, you can let them know that, you're just really trying to get on par with where the rest of your peers are in Macomb County. One of the other things that we always look at is the history of bond elections. And this is across the state of Michigan for the last 10 plus years. We want to look at where those bond trend as far as election results and positive activity. We really want to make sure we're kind of betting on the winner or betting on the positive side of things. So over the last 10 plus years, bond elections have passed at about a rate of about 70%. So that's great news. But when you break it down a little bit further and you look at it, a bond election that's asking for a 0 tax rate increase versus a bond election asking for the taxpayers to increase what they're paying, that changes drastically. A no rate increase is about a 90-some% passage rate. As soon as you start asking the taxpayers for an increase, it doesn't matter if it's $1 or if it's $100, that percentage drops down below 60% passage rate. So when we talk to school districts, we usually ask them, what would it be for a no tax rate increase? Because that gives the district the best odds of passing it. Not saying that that's what the number has to be. There are many districts that do ask for an increase, but the odds are definitely in the favor of the school district when they do ask for a no tax rate increase. So we wanted to share that information. So we did ask PFM, who's your financial advisor, what would that be? What is that limit that the school district could ask for a tax rate increase? So the first number they gave us, top left corner there, was $26 million. That's the number that the district could ask for the taxpayers without increasing the tax rate. They would just continue to pay the current amount that they're paying. Recent information, as early as this morning, the financial advisors looked at it again and say, you know what, there's some options that you have. With $26 million, what that would mean is that you would go and sell bonds for the full $26 million up front and then spend that money over the next 4 years. Now, what that does is that you're starting to pay interest and pay that back immediately. What you can do is instead of borrowing that entire amount, you can actually borrow more money, but borrow that in 2 different phases or 2 different series. So you could, the kind of middle bar there, this looks like sort of purple on the screen, is you could ask for $18 million now and start going, and that would take care of you for the next couple years worth of work, and then another $18 million later on for a total of $36 million, but it still would be a no tax rate increase to the community. It would only be 1 vote. The voters would only have to vote once on that, but it generates an additional $10 million on top of what that initial number was that we got. So this was very encouraging news, but we also did ask him, you know, what would a 1 mil increase be, just to kind of give us some data points if we did want to go a little bit further. And you can see that's between $40 and $50 million that generates, that's a 1 mil increase. So 1 mil, to kind of clarify, 1 mil means that you're going to pay $1 for every $1,000 of your taxable home value. So if you had a house that appraised at $200,000, that was the market value, was a $200,000 house, your taxable value is usually 50% of that. You know, you get that tax paperwork from the city, it'll say your taxable value, so your taxable value might be $100,000, so you're gonna pay $100 a year on that house if you wanted to raise 1 mil. I don't ever wanna say if that's a lot of money or not a lot of money, you know, because for some people that's a lot of money. So we never like to ask for an increase if we don't have to. We always recommend if you can go for a no increase. Usually communities are much more comfortable, continue to pay and continue to support the district at the level they have been supporting them. Next slide. And a lot of times we get the question of, you know, how does that happen? How does that magic happen that we can generate $36 million, but it's no increase to my taxes? And really what it is, if you think about your house mortgage, if at some point you've been paying off your mortgage for 20-some years and you want to do some major improvements to your house, you're going to stay there a long time, you do a refinance to your house mortgage. You can borrow money out of there and you can continue to pay that same amount. You're just paying it for a longer debt. So what this graph is representing is what's in yellow right now is what your current debt is on the 2009 bond program that you're paying off. You've nearly paid off that debt. And what's represented in blue is where that debt would be replaced. So that top bar, right there at 3.5 mils, it continues to stay at 3.5 mils all the way across for the next several years. So you're just replacing where that debt is dropping off. You're continuing that debt for an additional 20 to 25 years. So hopefully, and again, feel free to stop me if you want to. Again, I will be back here. We got some time at the end, but I wanted to at least start framing the timing and the financial picture for you to give you some bumpers of what we're looking at. So the scope of work, that's really probably what's more exciting. People want to know what the scope is. If I get this for no tax rate increase, what am I getting for that, or what are we recommending? So the starting point for this whole program was the facility assessment that Partners in Architecture did back in 2020. Now, we had to kind of take this a little bit of grain of salt, and it's no offense, they did a great job on it. It was a great assessment, but 2020 was a totally different time period in dollars and cents compared to where we are today post-COVID. You know, pricing has gone up 30-some% in a lot of areas. So all the needs are on there, all its graded data. We just have to adjust the cost from what was originally assessed. And they did a great assessment on what the needs are, your roofs, your boilers, your parking lots, your things you need to keep your buildings and your students inside there safe, warm, and dry. So we use this as our starting point, as our benchmark to move from there. But from that starting point, we started to think about what can we do, what would the wants be? You know, let's not just focus on what the needs are. You know, we want to address those needs for sure, but you know, what are the wants of the school district to improve, not just maintain what you have? And one of the first things that kind of came out of our group and our meetings was the playgrounds. You know, what could we do to improve those playgrounds? Because those playgrounds don't affect just the kids during the school day. That affects your entire community outside of your school days, after hours. It makes those people want to come to those. So in looking at your playgrounds, we did a lot of playground work back in 2009. It was great playground work, but it wasn't all brand new. It took care of certain areas. So we want to see if we can take that to the next level or the next evolution of it. So some of the stuff we want to do is replace some of the equipment that may have been in good shape back in 2009, but is starting to age out. We really want to look at some of the surfacing and the drainage issues that have been out there. Days like today, obviously, the kids aren't playing out there, but if it's a little bit warmer, still with the rain, they're not playing outside in there. So we're going to look at how do we improve the drainage so that when you do have a rainy day like this, the kids can play on those playgrounds relatively quickly. And we're also looking at putting some of the, I call it the rubberized surfacing in some select areas. It is an expensive product, but it's an excellent product. It wears real well. We've got some of this at school where I live. It's been out for 20 years. It's excellent for ADA, for special needs students to get out there on the playground. It's just a high quality product. So we feel that it would be great to put this in certain select areas in the playgrounds to make those more user accessible for some of our population. In addition, we feel fencing is very important. We want to make sure we fence these areas in so they stay safe, the students stay out of the parking lots. And the fencing's in pretty rough shape. It really is due to be replaced, including the ball fields. We're looking to make a nice kickball field, but some of that fencing's in poor shape. So really, I just want to improve the outside of those areas, not just take care of things. What I'd like to do is turn over to Darren to talk a little bit about some parking lot improvements.
So at the time we did the assessment back in 2020, we met with all the principals of the schools and talked about all their needs. But one of the big focus areas for just about all the principals was needs on the outside of their building and their site. And what's highlighted here is just a portion of what we've looked at. But for example, this is the Early Learning Center. We met with Valerie over there, and she identified a few of the difficulties that they have, needs like increased parking, visitor parking, parent drop-off, possibly a new circulation path around the school to help circulate those parents coming through. It's certainly an active site. The parking lot that's existing is also in rough shape, and so we'd make improvements there as well. So what we would do as a part of the bond work is sit down with her again and whoever else wants to be involved, and we would refine this, have it evolve, get all the parties who are interested involved, and take another look at it. This just gives you an outline of some of the things we're starting to think about at the site. Next slide, please. Sure. You're talking about along David Street? Yeah, so there's a kind of that line right there. So one of the things proposed along David Street is to cut into the site where that sidewalk is, allow a spot for buses, cars, whatever, to pull off the street to be able to park there. The buses would come in from the right side, obviously, park in there to allow the students off to the right. And if it's used after the buses are gone, the cars can certainly park in there as well and also drop off. And this creates a safer environment. I haven't seen it firsthand, but I hear David is very busy every day. So, yeah, right. Craziness for 15 minutes, right? Okay, so again, this is Bellevue, right? One of your bigger schools as far as square footage and lacking in parking compared to the other facilities. So again, this is just a concept showing how we create a parent drop-off lane or extend it, add needed parking off to the left there along Bell, and then again, a possible dedicated bus drop-off lane off of Phlox, and then a possible relocation of the playground when that gets upgraded. One of the opportunities we have at Crescentwood is to connect to Eastwood Street. And so what we're showing there is a drive that would allow vehicles to come off of Eastwood. We do have to go through the process with the City of Warren to allow us to do that. We have done it successfully in the past. But if everything works out, we create a new connection point, allow parents to come off of Eastwood and then exit as they normally would through the roundabout to the east. And then, again, this is just showing how circulation would occur. There's also a need to reconfigure that parking lot and add parking there as well. So we would go through that process as well. This is Pleasant View. The biggest thing there is Topher, right? You've got a decent amount of parking along the west side, which is on the bottom there, but really need a spot for buses to drop off. There's power lines right along Topher, so if we can bring them in off the street, we would do that. It's an expensive enough thing that sinking fund, again, it's not going to cover it. You're going to spend most of your yearly sinking fund money just in doing that and making those site improvements. So if you can get that bond passed, that's certainly something that's pretty easy to do. This is a very crude roof plan of your middle school and administrative building. In the sinking fund, we took care of Crescent Woods roof. That was by far the worst in the district, but there's also some rough spots at the middle school. Those red areas are the two areas, actually there's three, I'm sorry. So the one to the right, that bottom part that says Area E, that's your administrative area plus classroom areas. Areas A and B, again, are your gym and cafeteria, and those would be things we'd want to definitely do. Crescent Woods roof, for example, was just over $700,000 to just do that. So you certainly need a good chunk of money to continue the roof maintenance on those buildings. And then at the middle school, one of the things we were doing at the elementary schools is creating, and the Early Learning Center was creating secure entry vestibules. Middle school doesn't have that at the moment, neither does the high school. So as a part of our assessment, we also looked at security, right? So we're starting to implement the security at the elementary schools and the Early Learning Center. We'd want to continue that at the middle school and or the high school. And in the high school, boy, there's a lot you could do, right? There's a lot of different opinions about what to do and how to do it and when to do it. And so we're certainly trying to get as many people involved as we can to discuss the options. Here's a few that have been talked about. The resuscitation of the pool and using it, the potential either mothballing or removal of a portion of the building, upgrades to the culinary arts program, and then modifying the existing entry off of Cousins potentially and creating a new secure entry there, because right now it's coming in off of the east side off the parking lot, and that's kind of a challenging thing for security to check people in through that. So again, just a few things identified. This is not a comprehensive thing. There's a number of discussions we're going to continue to have and plan as we go forward with the bond, but this is where we're kind of at the moment.
I just want to add on to that, Darren, that
Sure.
The high school is such a treasured piece of people's experience in Eastpointe that we also want to ensure that we're lifting community voice, staff voice in any work and in that process forward. So that's why we do not have a comprehensive plan, because we need
Sure.
to involve all of our stakeholders in that conversation.
Sure. And we turn it back over to Jeff for talk about security.
Thanks, Darren. I always get jealous. You guys always get the pretty pictures that are a lot more fun to look at and read. So in addition, safety and security is always, unfortunately, because of events that have recently happened, it's always a top mind of what can be done there. So we definitely want to look, we mentioned the secure entrances at the secondary buildings, but also security cameras. And security cameras are great on the outside of a building, but they don't really work well unless you've got the exterior lighting to go along with it. So we feel those two go hand in hand. And the fact that we're going to do a lot of parking lot improvements at the elementary schools, it gives us a perfect opportunity to start putting some security cameras out on light poles. So it really all tie bars together into a master plan to make those buildings give them a lot more security cameras that are much more usable than what they currently are. And then technology, this is something that we're starting to look at. We know you've done a lot of improvements through the ESSER funds with your technology in your buildings to give your students the devices. But one of the things that a bond issue allows you to do is to put that at the end of the program as a refresh. Right now, you want to make sure that those dollars are sustainable. We can't imagine that those ESSER dollars will be out there much longer. So the district needs to look at, what are they going to do in 5 years from now when those devices start to age out? How do you replace those to make sure that you sustain what you've provided those students? The bond issue would allow you that opportunity to replace those devices at the end of their life. So kind of taking that, this didn't come out as nice as I thought it would. So kind of taking in some dollars, I just want to give you some ranges right now because again, we're starting to look at where these are, but the Early Learning Center, we're between $3.5 and $4.5 million to take care of the priorities 1, 2, and 3. The 4 elementary schools are between $10 and $13 million to take care of all the priorities that were identified. And that also includes the playgrounds and the parking lot improvements. At the middle school and the high school, right now we're just looking at priority 1s. because we want to make sure that we don't want to go make sure we don't go in there and replace ceilings and then have to go renovate the space and tear out ceilings that were recently put in there. So we're being a little more cautious on what we're doing at the the high school and the middle school, but we obviously want to take care of the roofs, take care of the pool, take care of those things that are just, call them no-brainers, that we want to make sure are improving those spaces. Safety and security is between $1 and $2 million, depending on how many cameras we wind up placing. And then technology, we've set a kind of a placeholder in there for $2 to $4 million. We're working with the technology department to realize what that's going to be, and not only what the device replacement's going to be, but trying to project what the infrastructure replacement needs are going to be in order to support those devices, because we know those devices only get faster and require more behind-the-scenes wireless and wired infrastructure behind that. So right now, we're starting to find our bumpers between $21 to $39 million. And as I mentioned earlier on, that we've got a target of $36 million that the district can go for without a tax rate increase. So we're feeling pretty comfortable here right now that we're not doing something we can't achieve, that we can't bring forward to the voters, that would be out of the ordinary. We feel that we've got something that's very manageable. Now it's going to be a matter of prioritization, starting to go back and forth to say, what do we really want to do? What's the number one priorities? And what are the things that we want to put off for that phase 3 part of the program. But right now, we feel we got something that's very manageable to work with over the next month or two. And all those dollars are all in dollars. I'm just kind of clear. Those dollars include all, they include a 10% contingency, because if you've done construction before, you open up walls, you find stuff that you didn't expect. Professional fees, the financing, general conditions to take care of stuff like dumpsters and porta-johns, those kind of things. So those are all in numbers that we're looking at on there. There's not be nothing added on top of that. So next steps, just want to make sure that the board knows, as I mentioned before, we're going to be back here. Not that I don't want to have discussion right now. I definitely welcome any questions, but there are going to be several chances to continue to look at this as we refine the program. So on March 9th, the bond team is going to get together one more time. At that point, we'll have the bids from the mechanical work that's planned. That's a large part of the sinking fund program. Once we have those numbers, we'll know what the sinking fund can accomplish versus what dollars we need to set aside in the bond to make sure to complete those mechanical projects. At that point, we refine that. We would like to come back to the board on March 13th to share a more refined program with you. I've got very detailed work lists that we'll send to you that shows every little thing. Basically, it's a repeat of what was in the facility assessment that was originally done, but just need all that information on there. And then come back to you again on March 27th, after you've had more time to digest that, and us more time to look at it a little bit closer. And on the 27th, we're going to start to look at, okay, we really need to start zeroing in on what this might be, so we have time to present this, prepare the actual bond application that goes off to the Department of Treasury. On April 10th, we have our meeting with the Department of Treasury to review this. The Department of Treasury, they want you to go for bond programs. They're not there to stop you, but they do have their process. They do have their rules that they have to follow. So we're going to go meet with them. It's a preliminary meeting to review it with them to make sure that everything that we're planning on, there are certain things that you cannot spend bond dollars on. You can't spend bond dollars on software. You can't spend bond dollars on repairs, staffing. There's things you can't do. So they just want to make sure that what you're proposing, pass muster. That when you take it to the community, when you take it to your attorneys, they're all very happy with that. So on April 10th, that evening, we'll come back to you. If everything goes well, you'll review it. It's more of a rubber stamp at that point because you've seen it a couple times. But at that point, you sign it and you officially ask the Department of Treasury to do their formal review process where they're going through, double checking all my math, making sure everything adds up, making sure there wasn't something else. They look at your enrollment projections. That's something that we have to do, is to make sure that we're justifying the enrollment of the buildings and put that information in there. They do a lot of double checking on things. And after that, they take about a 30-day review. We'll have that review back in early May. So at that point, on the May 8th board meeting, the board would have the option to call for election in order to meet an August election date. So that's kind of those are those big milestones in front of the board to review that. And we'll do our very best to provide you all the information and give you all the answers we can along the process. So with that, I guess, Robert, Christina, did I miss anything before I open up the floor?
Well, I have a couple questions because ultimately we as a board, we have to decide exactly how much we want to go for, right? And when we want to go for it.
It's 100% the board decision, yes.
It's pretty much our decision, right? So I'm looking at a couple factors, and I was looking at a couple slides that you had. First off, the results of the election that you had, as far as whether you asked for an increase or no increase. Is it possible, can we get a little bit larger sample size? Because I noticed, like, I was really looking at the August date that was on there, and 100% of the time it passed when there was no increase, but 67% of the time it did pass when there wasn't, but there was only 3 times. So that's a pretty small sample size, so I don't know if we can go past years to actually look at August and past years to see what actually happened in August elections, because, you know, you can kind of look at the data and get an idea. I don't know if that 67% goes up, goes down. I don't know if it affects our decision. You know, I mean, but when I was looking through the slide, August was the highest, you know, as far as when you got to the percentages where, when you actually asked for an increase. But to me, 3 is a pretty small sample size. It's hard to make a determination as to whether or not you would want to ask for an increase based upon that number.
It's my understanding that May elections are the most well-approved.
Yeah, there's some psychological to that. Yeah, May is one of the more popular election dates, and November is probably the second most popular. August has always been the least popular traditionally because it's during the summer. You know, there's not a lot of touch points for the school district to engage their folks to get them out to vote. Now, in the past 3 years since COVID's hit, and because everybody's got absentee ballots, August has become much more popular. That's why you're seeing a low sample size, is because it just never was very popular with school districts. But in the last several years, it's become more and more popular, and it's been very successful.
Yeah, but we also have to think long-term too, because if you go for one and you get it passed and it's not quite what you needed, and you're gonna want some more later on down the line, how fast can you turn around and ask for another? You know what I'm saying? Because you can reach the point where if you start asking year after year after year after year, people are like, no, I'm kind of tired of this, right?
Yeah, voter
So-
fatigue is a term that the
You know,
campaign
so,
people-
I mean, there's, and then we can look at historically, I know in our community, in fact, any of the measures recently within the last, I want to say about 5 years or so, maybe 6, anything that has been asked for voter approval in our community has been approved. So that's, knock on wood, that's a good sign, and I'm glad that our community supports us as much as they do. Because everything from, I think, special education on the county end, to our sinking fund, to anything we've ever asked for, pretty much the voters have approved. The second thing is you talked about, if you do go for an increase, it's based upon the taxable value of homes in our community. I don't have offhand, I bet I could probably Google search, I don't have my phone with me, to figure out exactly what the average taxable value of a home in our community is, but I think that's an important piece of information to have as well too, so that we know when we're going and we're asking for something, how much is it gonna be? Because say, for instance, the average taxable value of a home in Eastpointe is, well, let's say your house is valued at $100,000, the taxable value is half of that, right? So it'd be $50,000, so if we went for an additional mill, it'd only be
It'd be
$50.
yeah, $1 a week, yeah. That's-
$50, $1 a week. So, I mean, that's a big story. Also, another factor to take into consideration too is the homeowners are the ones that have to pay the additional property taxes based upon this. So we also should having information as to how many renters versus how many actual homeowners we have would be advantageous to us as well too. Yeah. That includes all
All property,
properties.
not just home.
So if we went average taxable value, it would include, we're not supposed to promote this particular businesses, I guess, but it would also include that bakery on 9 Mile that I go to, and what their value is of theirs, as well as the value of my house.
I mentioned we could probably find out what they call homestead residence, average value.
Yeah, see, you got me, because I wasn't thinking businesses, but you're right, I forgot all about the businesses. I was thinking more of the homes. But the businesses are affected as well too.
Mr. President,
Go ahead,
I
yeah.
just wanted to state that before I was elected to the board, I had someone to send me an email, text, and ask me why was they paying, why were they paying, and did I know why it went up? So I think there is some in there now in our area that's probably not as forgiving as others. So I'm just saying, this is just something that came to me personally.
Well, no, I'm just saying, these are some of the factors
Right.
that we have to
Right,
weigh.
right.
And while I respect the businesses, no disrespect to the businesses because they're important to us, but there are far more voters that live in homes than there are businesses that actually vote in our community. So since we're trying to pass something, we have to look at the voters and who's actually voting for it as well, too. So we have to take that into consideration as well. You know, so, I mean, I like the idea, we have to go for a bond at some point. It's just a matter of strategically, how do we go about doing it? And what do we want to do? And I know you've already talked about, and I did mention to the superintendent as well, that whatever we do, we have to have parents involved in our community, because we're really starting to grow something when you start looking at the younger ages. I mean, we joked around about that, I said 15 minutes of, it's 15 minutes of craziness over on David, over at the Early Learning Center. So that place is developing like crazy. And there's a whole lot of traffic there, and let's put it this way, it's a headache. I drive down there, it's more disbelief than anything, you know, I don't get angry about it when I drive down the street at that time of day. I just can't believe how many people there are, and I'm like, but it's a fantastic headache. To me, it's like, it's a headache I like having. It's like, there's a lot of activity here. But I like, and we need to make improvements because, of course, you know, and everything you've described is pretty much to make it user-friendly, which I think is where we're kind of at as a district. We want to make sure that it's user-friendly for the families as well as the kids in the district as well. I mean, you look at the playgrounds, more user-friendly playgrounds. If you're looking at the drop-off zones and things like that, that's more user-friendly for parents dropping off their kids, and it's safer as well, too, for the kids. I can tell it's safer because the arrangement it is now, it's tough. It is tough on parents. But, no, I think we have to at some point. And I'm good.
I have a
Anybody else?
question. Yeah, I do. So the total that we looked at was 36, but the high point was 39. And is that really taking into account of the price of the rapid increase of supply cost? And will we end up having to come back and say, well, we thought it was 39, but it really ended up being 52, you know? Because that, and is there any way of some type of, I want to call it recycling, but I don't know what they call it in the industry, like some things that we already have that needs to be improved, but we can use some of the materials or something like that to help fray off the costs?
I'm trying to think of, I mean, I guess the best example I always think of is the roofing example. You know, if we get to the roofing before they get really bad, you get to save the insulation on there. You can just put a roof over the top. It'd be the same thing as your house. You know, you don't want to let the roof go completely bad because then you got to replace the plywood. So, I mean, there are certain things that we always recommend the districts do before they get to the point of no return. So that might be one of the same thing with their parking lots. The parking lots can get to the point of no return where you got to replace a lot of the base underneath that parking lot because it's just gone to mush. You know, if you can get to it beforehand, sometimes you can save some of that base. So it doesn't maybe quite answer your question, but those are things that we do think of how do we kind of control that cost so we're not having to do a full-sale 100% replacement. We can
Now,
save something that's still
Many
there.
of the projects that we do have to do are more expensive because as a district, a number of items had not been addressed. So some of their costs are higher for us because we had ceased doing some repairs as cost-saving measures to keep the district financially in a good place. So what we are trying to do now is set up an ongoing bond program and set up a plan so that we can continue the momentum that we've started with the sinking fund and the ESSER dollars. And we wanted to capitalize on this opportunity now to have a no-mill increase to keep this work going. But the cost of it is going to be higher than regular maintenance because we have a lot of priority ones. And we need to take care of those to have a good envelope and a good structure to keep our children and our staff safe, dry, and having good spaces for learning.
My question is about let's say we go for the 36 mil. You said we ask for 18 and then come back in 2 years and ask for another 18 or something of that nature.
Yeah,
It'll be one vote.
Yeah.
It'll be one vote.
No, I understand that, but my question is we vote on it all at one time, but let's say that 18 mil that we asked for the first 2 years, after that, by the time we get to getting the other 18, we realize that, oh, we need 20. At that time, can we get 20, or do we have to revisit it and do all of
We
that?
would have to go back for another bond, and it would be an increase in mills to
Yeah.
request additional money.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, so,
And it might not be 18 and 18, and that was just the early math the financial
Right.
advisor did. We may decide we want to do 20 and 16, or, I mean, some combination of that. But yeah, when that ballot language that you put in front of the voters, we'll tell them that's our intent, is to go for a no tax rate increase, and that the anticipated amount is $36 million.
I have a couple. Go ahead, you didn't have, I already had a bite at the apple, you go.
I never jump in, but I'm gonna have to learn to do that. Will we have information regarding the different varieties of roofing? I guess because I'm wondering, especially with a flat roof, wouldn't it be more effective to do rubber roofing than the other varieties because they're supposed to last longer?
You guys doing Duralast roof here? What are you doing?
Yeah, so Crescent Wood was just replaced, and that was what's called a PVC roof, okay, which is similar to a rubber roof membrane. PVC is just a different color, essentially. It works about the same. It's a little more pliable than the rubber type. So it's very similar to that type of roofing. There's on the high school, there is that same type of roofing as well. Back in the 09 bond, that type of roofing was put in, and it's still very effective for those flat roofs, for sure. And it's cost effective. You know, they're the old style of granules and tar and asphalt sheets. Nowadays, very expensive, great roofs, but you can still get 25 years out of that rubber or PVC type roof. So that's what we would typically recommend. So.
Yeah, there's pros and cons. I mean, the only issue with those rubber plastic roofs is they're a little bit slippery. So if you got to send guys up there to do maintenance this time of year, it's a little dangerous. That's the only thing I hear about from the maintenance guys, why they don't like those roofs. But yeah, over the time they found that those are easy to repair. There's just a lot of the pros definitely outweigh the cons of those old tar roofs that we did way back when. Plus, I can't imagine what they do to your lungs. But yes, we'll be happy to share all that information as we continue to move on. As we recommend contracts for roofing, we'll let you know what our plans are for those things.
Anyone else?
Yeah, and I just want to add the comment, you know, the early learners, the district did do 5-year enrollment projections. That's one of the requirements for the Department of Treasury. And to see your early learning numbers, I mean, I've never seen anything like that. I mean, it kind of shows that you've got something special here with those. That's why we really felt we were on the right path of starting to focus on the early learner. I mean, the numbers were going to double at that young age. And if you can kind of keep those kids in the system, that does a great thing for the district to keep those elementaries solid. So we'll get that enrollment projection data out to the board too, because that was very encouraging to see that. And, it's kind of just one of those things that's very nice to highlight.
So you're keeping track of that. Are you keeping track of, how to put it, what our our houses are going to be worth in 5 years? Because you are?
Yeah, so the assumption made by our financial planner, the projections that were made by our financial advisor, PFM, his name's Nate Watson, I think he anticipates like a 4% or 4.6% increase in taxable value each year in our properties. So that's part of it when he looks at the bond and how many mills it would take to pay off that debt, how far it goes out into the future, those principal and interest payments, that's factored in.
And I just wondered, because this year was a big increase for most of the homes around schools. So,
There's a cap, I think it's 5% on how much can go up at the max each year. The rate of inflation or 5%. The lesser of those two.
I'd rather it go up than down, but.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to, kind of shortchange it, but, I mean, quite honestly, this is the lowest cost investment that, you know, a homeowner can make to their home to increase the value of it, is keep those schools and communities going. So, yeah, the return on investment for, you know, if the district does decide to go for an increase, that dollar a day is gonna more than pay itself off in the life of that homeowner, so, or if the district goes for a no tax rate increase, even that extended debt is gonna pay itself off in those housing increases. And I know PFM uses very conservative numbers in their stuff, because they wanna make sure that, you know, it doesn't, you know, down the road, it doesn't, you know, don't wanna miss those marks. But I know their numbers are always very conservative, and, it probably will exceed those return on investment numbers. And we'll get you a full copy of this, so if you wanna look
I
at
have
the
one
lease
last
charts.
one, supply chain issues. What will that do? I mean, what's the potential effect of supply chain issues on our bond?
So we just,
I mean, what can we, because I know we pretty much got to spell out exactly what we're going to do with the money. I think we can trim back projects if we're running short on money, right? So we can do a little bit less than we maybe asked for. We can't necessarily just add things if we want, can we?
yeah, you're guiding.
I mean, you have a plan that's outlined that you have to do.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, with the flow of money and how it happens, is there any supply chain issues? Because I know, for instance, air conditioning, we're trying to get our buildings air conditioned, and we want to do it this year, we can't do it this year, we got to do it next year, right?
Correct.
Because it's supply chain.
Yeah.
Now, does that affect the money, and do you hit a point where if you don't have the projects done by such and such a date, you lose that money?
You don't, well, I guess you have to have a strategy up front.
But I mean, that could be a long ways down the line.
Yeah,
but still.
you are required to spend 85% of the funds within 3 years. And the Department of Treasury does that so that the district doesn't just sit on the money and earn interest on there and not do the improvements for the taxpayers. So there's a cash flow that we have to follow. So while sometimes we can't do it fast enough, we also can't do it slow enough. We have to follow that 85% in 3-year spend down. So that's another positive to doing the bond in 2 series, to do a 2 18 million series, because once you sell the bonds, that's when the clock starts ticking. So by doing that, it gives you a longer time to spend those dollars. So if we did hit a stumbling block along the way somewhere, we have some extra time to do those dollar values. But that is the intent. There's some guidelines in there that forces us to make sure we're doing those investments.
But can we
timely.
swap out a project?
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
I mean, if say something, we run into something and we can't get something done in time before the money's gonna run out, but we have another project that we could get done to utilize that money, and we won't have the supply chain issue, we can swap projects out.
correct. Yeah, you can put that mechanical stuff on hold and go take care of your roofs, or go take care of your parking lot, things that have a lot shorter lead time. Yeah, absolutely, you could do that. We're just trying to get smarter by bidding work out, 18 months in
It's
advance.
just the supply chain has been something else,
Yeah, yes, it's.
you know, and it's like,
I appreciate your.
you gotta always think about it.
understanding. It's been a struggle for us. You just have to, we have to ask these guys to design faster so that we can bid faster and that you guys can award contracts to get stuff ordered faster. That's the nature of the business now.
Have you ever not been able to spend all the money?
Well, we used to always have savings. Now it's been a little more challenging the last couple of years because COVID's, kind of put us in a bad spot. But, oh, yes, and I will say that they're very forgiving in that. They understand that there are things that do happen. There's no 85% police that come after you if you don't spend those money. You just make sure I have to have a plan in place to spend those dollars. So if you came to them and said, look, we hit this problem that those chillers aren't showing up. Those chillers are $300,000. You know what? We're going to get it done, but the contract's awarded. Or you know what? We're going to switch gears and we're going to take care of that roof because we don't want to let that roof go and we want to spend those dollars down and do improvements. So yes, there's some flexibility as long as it's, your attorney's going to write this ballot language very, very flexible so that you'll have that flexibility to do that. And then, there'll be a very detailed plan the Treasury looks at to make sure that everything you're doing is above board.
There's actually a possibility that the labor rates could go down slightly after this initial, flush of COVID money, kind of washes through the system. Maybe the supply chain would ease, by that second series also. There is advantages to splitting it up like that.
Yeah, the way our formulas are set up for the costs, to put the cost together for this, is we'll take numbers like what partners put together. They put, hey, whatever, concrete's gonna cost $8 a square foot. We typically add an escalation factor in there because we know that that's the price today and not the price of when it's gonna be 2 or 3 years from now when it's done. So we'll add some escalation on that to account for that cost being done down the road. So I think there was kind of a question about, I think there were a couple questions on that cost increasing over time. As we put that escalation factor in there, not because we want to pad those dollars, we want to give you a realistic number because we know you're not buying a car today, you're buying a car 3 years from now. We want to try to anticipate what that price might be several years from now. And we've been using, 5% feels to be more comfortable. The industry standard used to be 3 to 4%. And the last couple of years, it's been like 30%. We're trying to find that sweet spot where the water's going to level out, and we're going to put that right number in there for you. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks or whatever, a couple of weeks from now.
This button is not working. Next, we have curriculum overnight field trip requests.
All right, good evening, Board of Education and Community. Tonight, the curriculum department is requesting approval for an overnight field trip. We're very excited to say that 9 of our Eastpointe High School students have been invited to compete in the Michigan Pro Start Invitational Competition in Port Huron, Michigan at the Blue Water Convention Center, March 5th through 6th. I think some of these students were students you met a couple weeks ago who presented the Board Appreciation Luncheon for our group. And this is a very exciting opportunity for our Culinary Arts CTE program students. Chef Shu is actually here joining us tonight as support, as is Mr. Eric Cerisa, an administrator that oversees CTE. Because of the schedule of competition times being so close, we are asking for an allowance for them to stay overnight, and they will be accompanied by Chef Shu as a chaperone. So, do we have your approval?
I'll make that motion that we approve the field trip.
Support.
Ms. Grunberg was supporting.
I know, I heard in my ear, I'm sorry, I just reacted.
That means we all support it.
It's always good when
We all support it.
they're jumping at it.
I heard you, that's still,
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment. My vote is not predicated on the fine luncheon that we had. But I do have to remark once again what a fine luncheon it was. Because you weren't here, I think, at the meeting that we had after that. We remarked about it after that already once, didn't we?
A lot.
You know I like to talk about food, right? You know I like to talk about food, right? Especially good food. Oh,
Ms. Rayford,
Yes.
Ms. Grunberg,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
yes.
Dr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Grunberg,
yes.
Mr. Williams, yes, and Ms. Richardson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next, we have second hearing of public. Does anyone wish to be heard? Anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, that opens and closes at, we'll say 7:37. Okay, next we have trustees' announcements. Mrs. Grunberg.
I just want to say I'm so excited for you. I don't know if we can come support you, but I'm going to try. I've been bugging them. And then I'm just really excited about it. Restaurant management was my thing in high school, and I loved it. So that's all I have to say tonight.
Ms. Rayford?
Thank you. I want to wish Akela Martin all the best. And Chef Shu, I expect to come home with a winner competition. I really enjoy what the students are able to do.
Mr. Roscoe?
Wonderful superintendent's report, it just brings joy. The bond planning presentation by Barton Marlowe, Grant, was excited about that. And the overnight trip with the Pro Start Invitational is always good. And we do look for a winner, 1 or 2 winners. Come take some hot sauce. Frank's.
Decorate.
And they're going to do well. The CTE programs are just building, and we're all excited about it. Just keep doing what we're doing, and thank God for the great administration that I have an opportunity to work up under. in the community that warranted me to serve as a board member, and I do appreciate it dearly. That's all I have to say.
Dr. Early.
I want to say first congratulations to our senior, Ms. Martin. I think that it's fabulous. Those scholarships can do great things, even if they can just take care of a few books. I want to say an extra special thank you to the MDE for listening. It is so hard to put these time frames on the administration that you don't realize is ridiculous. So I'm really happy that they listened to what y'all had to say. To the Culinary Arts Department. I went to culinary arts school and I hate to cook, but I love decorating cakes. I have so many cake pans and cake decorating stuff, so I want to know if we can come too. We can go together in the mobile home together and go down there and support you. Because I think that is so fabulous to see young people do great things. So I really applaud you for what you're doing.
Ms. Richardson.
Thank you. For the culinary, I was just elated with the food. I saw the competition that you guys are up with, and it's going to be a pretty good one. But Eastpointe stands out with that dinner. Maybe if you win, we can have another celebration.
She wants another.
But also for the bond, I've had people to text me about taxes, the money and things. And now I have an opportunity to tell them that our property value is going to go up. So if they just ride with us a little bit, they will see some improvement or see where their money goes. So I'm glad to hear that. So I'll be able to say it. Thank you.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Board. I was driving by driving by a couple of the middle schools yesterday and the day before, and just to see the awnings and the marquees going up, it gives the whole school, the whole city a refreshing look, and it really excited me to see that stuff is now coming into fruition. Congratulations, Akila Martin, on the scholarship award. As Dr. Early said, every dollar counts. And to Chef Shu and your crew, I think you're going to do a great job. Culinary is near and dear to my heart. I actually oversee that department at my church, and I do, I used to do, catering. I do it for friends and family now. But yeah, it's I love to cook and watch people enjoy my food. So good luck with that. You guys will do great. And great presentation, great board executive presentation by our wonderful superintendent, and her crew is doing such a great job. Thank you, and keep up. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start off with Caitlin. First off, thanks for everything you do. Looking forward to the marketing campaign that's going to come up and all the communication that's going to be coming out, because from what I've heard at conferences and classes that I've been to is we can't ever do enough of it, I guess, when it comes to our strategic plan. It's got to be out there. Everybody's got to see it. I know she won't toot her own horn, but the superintendent, she mentioned the three things that they kind of gave us a little leeway with as far as the partnership districts are. And when the issue was raised, I was at the same meeting as her with the MDE folks and all the partnership districts. I have to admit I was in the room, and she raised the issue, and I think pretty much everybody else in the room had swallowed their tongue, because I don't think anybody else was going to say anything. But she spoke up, and she raised an issue that actually she helped out a lot of the other partnership districts as well too. she was looking out for us, but the ripple effect, it helped them as well, too. Kayla Martin, wonderful on that scholarship. Hey, it's always good to get a scholarship. Can't complain about that. And then the one young lady in your superintendent's report that caught my eye, FloJo.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
FloJo. I mean, everybody's got to remember FloJo, right? I mean, the long nails and the outfits and the hair and everything. She had a style about her, didn't she? Oh, man, and she was fast. I mean, fast. And then I was just, it caught my eye. I don't know, there was a lot of them out there, but when I saw FloJo, and she kind of even had, she had a dress on that was kind of, I don't know what the term you would call it.
She was in costume.
She had a lot of flowers and stuff like that. Stylish, I guess, a rather stylish dress she had on. And then I want to wish good luck to, I guess I'm going to go ahead and coin them the Magnificent Nine. Because we're sending 9 there, right? So let's call them the Magnificent Nine. We'll send them out there to, what is it, the Blue Water Convention Center or something like that, right? We'll send them out there, and even though it's in Port Huron, I'm quite sure they'll do well. I had to get someone's goat here every now and then. Other than that, meeting adjourned.